In how many states is weed legal now?
I was trying to look it up exactly, but it depends on how you define legal. But in terms of fully fledged, full programs
Decriminalized.
with adult medical use, it's pretty much the West Coast. Montana is the newest ad. New York State, DC, Virginia is interesting as being on the list at this point. Maryland, ironically, is not yet for some reason, but basically the West Coast: Washington, Oregon, California, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Montana are all fully legal. Illinois, Michigan, New York, Virginia, Connecticut, Massachusetts.
Virginia's weird.
Vermont.
Virginia's weird on that one, like you said, though, because it's it can be purchased medical, but it is legal recreational.
Yes.
And there are different things too, because there's decriminalization and there is legalization.
Yes.
And have you gone into any of that? Because some people are upset with the legalization, saying all they're doing is putting a tax stamp on it and cracking down on people, versus just being decriminalized. People can go it willy-nilly.
Well, I think I started that list by saying it depends a little bit how you define the questions, because of exactly those issues.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but the long and short of it, I think the long and short of it is that you have more than a majority of states at this point that have it legal, medicinally or recreational or decriminalized, or your parlance of choice, enter in this sentence. But the numbers are interesting, because when you look at the acceptance rate by states and you look at the sort of national, you can do a poll on like just national, what do people think? It's interesting because the states sort of track it almost exactly. The populations of the states and it almost is a perfect track.
It's like gay marriage. Is it kind of a similar trajectory?
It is very similar to gay marriage in a lot of ways. Although the track for pot is a little bit longer in its distribution, but yeah. Still not legal in Texas, so there's that.
Which makes me laugh, because it's like Austin is the capital of Texas, right? And one would think that
it's decriminalized in Austin. They definitely will not arrest you for it in Austin.
I was gonna say, why would Joe Rogan go there? That sounds crazy.
Yeah, right.
The taxes are so much. The taxes
are nice.
And doesn't Willie Nelson live in Austin too? I mean, he's been a long proponent.
Well, yeah.
He could probably be inevitable. It's inevitable, and I don't know what we're waiting for at this point. And I think
Congress.
that. Well, thanks, Nate. That's helpful.
Don't ever hold your breath for Congress.
I envision blue laws. Like eventually it'll just be illegal nationally, and then jurisdictions can have blue laws like they do with alcohol. Because there are dry counties.
Yeah, like in Kansas. But what are the, like, what's the rationale to even continue to keep it illegal? Like it's the financial motives.
I think law enforcement likes it, because law enforcement uses that. I mean, how many people get picked up and it's like, okay, it's that roach, and then they get them in and then find other things on them. I mean, it's a perfect gateway arrest tool.
Pennsylvania Supreme Court just came down, I believe, with a decision saying that smell alone is no longer probable cause in and of itself, which is also the rule in California, incidentally. I don't know about other states, but I think that's one. I think you're right on the nose. It's like, well, I smell weed is always a good excuse to be able to search a car. How can you prove an officer lied about what they smell? But so and also a good reason for civil asset forfeiture, because hey, smell weed, let me just take your car and all your things, and But I'm of the general opinion that things should be legal unless they shouldn't be. There's a default presumption of legality because we're default free. This is good. And for most laws, I don't think it's terribly hard to think of reasons why those laws should exist. But on the marijuana thing, whatever rationale it had, assuming it ever had one, doesn't feel tenable at this point.
Can we go into the decriminalized versus legal though? That's why I brought it up earlier. So big brain Kurt could explain it to us. But some people would prefer decriminalized in the aspect of it's just, you can do it if you want. It doesn't matter. It's just not relevant.
No, I mean, personally, I prefer legalized. I have no problem going to my corner store and getting my Marlboro pot cigarettes. That would be the upshot, right? The difference is if it's decriminalized, then people can possess it or whatever, but they don't have any particular license to grow, or there's no there's no enforcement mechanisms, but it's a free for all, and there's no company in the world that's going to start operating on that basis. They want to operate in a legal environment where they can sell it with the tax stamps and all the rest of it, which I'm perfectly comfortable with.
But
and then you can choose. You can choose whether or not you want to get your Marlboro. And people think, one of the things people sometimes say is like, no one would do that. No one's going to get the Marlboro pot because people can grow it at home. I'm like, they absolutely will. People can grow tomatoes at home. They still go to the store and buy tomatoes. Because it's easier, more convenient, and all the rest of it.
What about big cannabis, though? And I'm being facetious, but what about big cannabis? It's a legitimate thing. You had big tobacco
cannabis,
where you have
I have no problem
a cabal of industries that are locking down. I have no problem with
big cannabis. I'm a capitalist. Let's go.
You see, I'm a little bit.
Big anything can be scary, though.
Yeah, I don't care for it when we get too tiered down the industry, and then now we get government subsidization and corporatization. Capitalism is the small, the smaller businesses that can no longer operate because they don't have the state licensing that they're supposedly going to have.
No, that's a fair point.
That's what I'm talking about.
That's a fair point, and I think goes to the conservative idea about levels of regulations and things like that. Like there probably needs to be rules, but how many rules, and to not squeeze out the little guy is a valid consideration. But still, I'm lazy ass, and I want to be able to go CVS and get my pot cigarettes.
Well, this is interesting what Forever Keeper said about Canada. He said, in my province, you need to buy it from a special government store in order for it to be legal. If you buy it from a friend, it's no longer legal.
No, that's the same thing.
They want their taxes.
That's a tax.
They want their tax. They want their tax stamp. It's fine.
It's like package stores in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
It literally is. It's following the exact track. Yes. Same with tobacco. If you grow your own or whatever, you can get into trouble. Yeah, definitely alcohol.
Incidentally, for the record, I have never smoked pot. This is all just a theoretical exercise for me, but I still believe in the libertarian value. I can't see the collective, whatever juice we're trying to get from this. It's not worth it. It's too expensive in every possible way. It's too expensive in terms of oppressing people. It's too expensive in terms of the number of law enforcement we need to enforce it. It's too expensive in our jail system. It's too expensive. My principal concern in the actual judging of things, because we now need all those judging. It slogs down the court system. That's my principal problem. But it's and also to be Schedule I by definition, it has to have no possible medical use, which seems like kind of bullshit at this point. Although I have to give props to the DEA, because it was the end of the Obama administration, and one of the last things that happened was the DEA published a paper on like all the reasons that pot should be illegal. And I have to give them credit, because obviously they were reaching for that result, but they did a really good job. So it's like, hey, they tried really hard and they did a good job. So props, I guess, to the DEA for finding reasons to keep it illegal.
Because don't forget, that's billions of dollars in funding they lose if they
well,
lose
one of the things I get to do as a citizen is disagree with the DEA and say they're full of shit.
It's easy to do.
Suck it, DEA.
Maybe we'll just shift it to ATF. It'll be ATF and W.
Yeah, that's where all the parties go. ATFE, right? Alcohol, tobacco, firearms, and explosives, man. To throw in some marijuana, man. It's like, that's not an agency, that's a corner store.
Yeah, it's a party.
It's not an agency. That's a corner store. That's
you know what?
Good.
I can't wait to the also about the two. Isn't the 2A decision coming out this month? Should be coming out this month for the
well, who knows when it will come out.
Okay,
your guess is as good as mine on which way the wind blows on when the Supreme Court decides anything. But yeah, it needs to be changed on the federal regulation, because I also like firearms and I can't like both. Because if you see, the reason is if you're a habitual user of any controlled substance, you can't have a possession of a firearm. It's illegal.
Which ironically,
it's in section 930, 18 USC 930.
But you can be a drunk. Which
yes, you can be a drunk because it isn't a controlled substance in the meaning of the law. I'm just quoting chapter and verse, baby.
I do not question that.